Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good day to everybody from all around the world. Welcome back to the CIB Presidential Seminar Series that we broadcast from Purdue University. As you all know, the theme for this semester is the directors and the leaders, regional leaders from all parts of the world that take care of activities for CIB. And today, again, we have indeed a great group of, or great set of our colleagues, Professor Billy Hare and Professor Patricia Tzortzopoulos, very well-known, well-admired academics. And let me give a quick introduction to their backgrounds, and then I'll hand it over to them. Also, this is the last seminar of the semester, and indeed, we are privileged to have our distinguished colleagues present their work to all of us. So Professor Patricia Tzortzopoulos is a professor at Nottingham Trent University. She's a professor of architecture. She comes from an architectural background, and her interests cover design management, lean construction, value generation, building information modeling, and design of healthcare facilities and social housing. She developed research projects examining requirements management, evidence-based design, code checking in healthcare design, participatory design, retrofit, social housing, among others. Patricia has been an active member of the International Group of Lean Construction since 1998, having served as reviewer and conference editor and organizer on several occasions. Patricia is an executive committee member for the Global Leadership Forum for Construction Engineering and Management Programs. GLF-CEM is intended to bring together professors from leading universities around the world who play a leadership and or administrative role in their respective programs. Patricia has led a number of research projects, supervised research students, and published extensively. She's also served as the vice president for CIB, by the way. Professor Billy Hare is a professor at Glasgow Caledonian University, and his specialty is construction management within the School of Computing, Engineering, and Built Environment at GCW in the UK. He is Deputy Director of the school's Research Center for Built Environment and Asset Management and former chair of the School Ethics Committee. Billy has a PhD in Construction, Health and Safety Management, BSc Honors in Construction Management, and a BA in Occupational Health and Safety. He joined GCU in 2002 after a career in construction contracting, and since then, he has delivered research on several HSE, IOSH, ESP, EPSRC, CITB, and industry-funded projects totaling over £1 million, 50+ peer-reviewed publication, and impact case studies for UK Research Excellence Framework. His research portfolio is focused on improving safety, health, and well-being within the construction industry, including studies that have improved worker engagement, migrant worker, health and safety, and safety in design. These contribute directly to the UN Sustainable Development Goals for good health and well-being and decent work. Billy is currently International Joint Coordinator of the International Council for Research and Innovation in Building and Construction, the CIB Safety, Health, and Well-being Working Group, and chair of several other industry working groups. His expert commentary is often sought by the media, and he was appointed as the Senior Advisor for Buildings and Construction for the independent review of the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital infections of 2018-19. He has recently published a database for analyzing suicide rates among construction occupations and in leading the Measuring Wellbeing Group for the UK Make It Visible initiative. Please welcome both Professor Patricia Tzortzopoulos and Billy Hare. Over to you, Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for the invitation, for being here. And thank you, Billy, to also being here with us today and to sharing this presentation. So really, really appreciate it. It's a pleasure, as I say, to be here. I'm going to share my slides. Hopefully you'll be able to see them. And if anyone wants to ask any questions whilst I'm speaking, please just feel free to do so, right? So what I thought of, just do so by speaking, because probably I can't see you all. So what I thought of doing today is just to present a bit of my personal reflections in terms of what are the current UK research opportunities going on, looking at it from the perspective of different UK funding bodies, and linking that to the context, to the concepts of Industry 5.0, which is, of course, something quite new. So I'll talk a little bit about Industry 5.0, and I'll discuss some of those opportunities on the basis of that. Before that, I am a professor of architecture, as Mark mentioned, and I just want to give you like 3 slides just to say the kinds of areas of research I've worked on in the past, just to give you a bit of a flavor of where I'm coming from when I'm talking about research opportunities here. So one of my areas of research has been around lean design and lean construction. So looking at value generation, reduction of waste, and improvement of productivity across both design and constructions. And some of the pieces of research I've worked on was around, of course, looking at building theory for lean construction, research around lean design, the integration in between lean and building information modeling, and how can we best use improvements from process improvements aligned to technological improvements that are going on, work around production planning and control, and that was again both in terms of design, planning and control, and construction itself, work around visual management and how visual management tools can be used to help improve construction sites, but also again help improve the way in which designers collaborate, specifically digitally, work around mass customization and retrofit of social homes. On a digital perspective, digital technology perspective, I've done some work around energy efficiency and improvement of energy efficiency through design. We've done some work on automated compliance checking of design, and that was done in health hospital buildings specifically. We've used virtual reality tools to help engage users in the design and specifically in retrofit of social homes. And I also done a piece of research on serious games, so that was completely outside my main body of research, but that was looking at developing a game to help reduce violence against young girls. Sorry. And then finally, healthcare design. So around in healthcare, I've done quite a bit of work around the healthcare built environment, improvement of user experience within healthcare environments, concepts of how can we better manage requirements, capture and modeling using technology for healthcare, and also research around evidence-based design. So as I say, this is just to give you a bit of a flavor of the kinds of things I've done in the past. So if we move on to the concepts of Industry 4.0 and 5.0, just very briefly, I think we all know that the concept of these industrial revolutions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 now all started with the mechanization, introduction of steam and water power in the 1800s. Then beginning of 1900s, the issues of mass production and assembly lines being used, of course, the use of electrical power. So that was considered the second industrial revolution. The third one was really much more recent, around automation, production systems with the use of computers and more powerful computers, and also based on IT systems and some basic level of robotics. And the fourth industrial revolution is really, it's quite much more recent, is really about the smart factory and autonomous systems and Internet of Things and using machine learning and all those newer technologies to help improve production. So, as I say, the concept of Industry 4.0 is introduced in the Hanover Fair in 2011, so relatively recently. And it's really about looking at production through this form of cyber physical production systems, right, in which we have machines, but a lot of technology, supporting humans in producing basically things. So it was pretty much around, making machines, making intelligent decisions and enabling the manufacturing of different things. And it's pretty much a technology-driven transition and innovation, right? So so those are some of the principles of the Industry 4.0. So it's all about service-oriented reference architecture, so intelligent and self-organized cyber production systems, issues of interoperability, adaptability, and changeability of production systems for changing requirements, and so on. And of course, data security is a very important element on that too. So it is really all about having the internet connecting different machines and different systems and automated systems on a construction site, for instance. And also, so there's intelligence there on the site where different machines and equipment talk to each other, where, and you can, and I am just, struggling here with my slides. Also, it applies to how we use our homes. So we're having intelligent systems or helping us operate our homes. And for instance, I bought a washing machine not very long ago, which is Wi-Fi enabled. I never really understood how and when I would ever use a washing machine that's Wi-Fi enabled, but we have all these technologies available, and that they're supposedly going to help us change the way or improve the ways in which we live. And of course, that also applies to the concept of smart cities, right? Where we have all this interconnectivity and information being shared by different systems to help us operate at the city level more effectively as well. So if you think of a demonstration of Industry 4.0, it's really about this idea of a smart factory, a lot of robots and a lot of machines actually helping production, and all enabled and controlled through our smartphones and tablets. But one thing to consider, especially when we think of our recent, all the issues that we have now on sustainability, and of course the idea of reducing carbon. I mean, when you look at the prospects in terms of the use of IoT, for instance, right? It's estimated by 2025 will be 41.6 billion artifacts actually internet enabled that will be generated as 80 zettabytes of data. And I don't even know what that means. I think it's really difficult to grasp what it really means. And all that, of course, consumes energy, and we need to really be considering the purpose of that. Do we really need to have all that internet connectivity? Do we really need to spend all that to produce all the carbon for actually doing that? But anyway, it's just there for a thought for us all. And as business started to actually embrace the idea of Industry 4.0, along came the idea of 5.0, which is even more recent, right? But what the whole thing around 5.0 is that to say, okay, we have all this technology, we can use robotics, mechanization, and Internet of Things to actually process data and have much better data to support decisions and improve production. But we really need to shift this idea from the digital innovation so much, bring it back to the idea of actually using all that to ensure that we achieve societal goals, which go beyond only growth, economic growth, right? So the idea is that the industry needs to do this transition to become more resilient and to become a provider of prosperity, right? In which we actually ensure that we make production respect the boundaries of the planet, which is something that hasn't happened, of course, up to now very much, and placing the well-being of industry workers to the center of the production process. So it's very much about using research and innovation to drive improvements in the industry to actually take the benefits out of these new technologies without respecting the planet and, of course, improving quality of life for humans. So those are the kinds of the three core central themes around Industry 5.0. So it's all about human centricity, enabling sustainability, and enabling resilience across production systems. And now what I'm going to do, so again, some of the core values of Industry 5.0, one of them is around human centricity, which is all around saying, putting human needs and interests at the heart of production. So shifting production process from this idea of more technology driven to a more society centric process. And there's a lot of research, new proposals now that actually focus on supporting the achievement of that value, if you want. The idea of shifting workers as cost workers as an investment, right? The use of the enabling of actually the use of technology to actually be more adaptive to user needs, and safe and inclusive work environments, which I'm assuming Billy is going to be talking a little bit more in a minute about. So if you look at some of the research opportunities that actually are current at the moment that talk about this element of human centricity, and you'll see on my slides, you'll see sometimes I'm referring to, for instance, the SRC, which is the engineering, the social sciences research council here in the UK, right? So those are some of the kinds of topics that are currently available for research proposals. So issues around human-computer interaction, right? And the use of AI, artificial intelligence, for social good. So combining the idea of human-computer interactions and the use of AI to solve some societal challenges in health, education, inclusion, for instance. Another topic that's current is around social innovation and inclusive design, right? So how new technologies can be designed to benefit different segments of society, and that could be very well applied to design and construction. And also, they also have a digital society program, which is looking at how technology impacts people's lives, works, and interactivity. And that, of course, again, has quite direct or can have quite direct influences in terms of built environment research. Also, there's issues around humans and nature, humans and culture, humans and health, right? So there's research looking from the HRC, for instance, looking at this idea of how human and nature interacts and how can we actually use that interaction to improve humans' health, but also improve the health of the environment, bring more biodiversity into cities, help us, help society learn how to better interact with nature. There are calls around cultural heritage and human identity, right? So how cultural practices shape human experiences and identities. And again, the built environment has quite an important role to play there. There has been quite a lot of calls over the past 3 or 4 years around the idea of healthy aging and how can we, and opportunities there for us to look at the built environment and how can we better use the built environment to support people, the growing older populations, to live at home for longer, having technology as a supporting mechanism as well. And issues about behavioral changes and what we need, how do we need to support behavioral change so we address sustainability. So issues of consumption, reduction of energy use, reduction of waste, and so on, all of which, again, we can tackle from a built environment perspective. And this is just an example of a recent project I've done that actually looks at this human-centric perspective, which was a 3-year research project done in collaboration with Unicamp in Brazil, TU Delft, and at the Netherlands, and the Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research in Germany. And that was actually looking at using technologies and the concept of a living lab to actually help elicit user needs and values and help empower users as well in the process of social housing retrofit. So if you move to the next core value of Industry 5.0, which is sustainability, it is all really about, there's quite a lot of emphasis on the literature on Industry 5.0 around circularity and circular processes and so the circular economy to reduce waste, reduce environmental impact, right? And looking at opportunities in that area, of course, there are very, very many here in the UK, especially after the publication of the net zero targets by the UK government. That has actually spread a lot of, it created a lot of opportunities around those areas. So there's a number of calls around net zero, carbon resilience at the moment. So this energy is net zero energy systems, net zero and biodiversity calls, calls around environmental sustainability and how do we help actually achieve net zero through different elements of land use, water management, and so on. Through the Innovate UK, again, there's a lot of opportunities for that, including, for instance, knowledge transfer partnerships, and we're currently developing a knowledge transfer partnership with a company, with an offsite manufacturing company here, trying to help them achieve net zero, not only in terms of the design of the buildings they produce, but also net zero in their own operations as the factory operations, right, in the offsite manufacturing plant. So there are opportunities around clean growth, you know, to look at how can we improve, support the improvement of processes and production, you know, but actually reducing carbon emissions. There's a huge call now at the moment looking at low carbon innovation. So how can we implement different types of innovations to support achieving low carbon, and also global challenges research funds, which are there to help us work with other countries internationally by looking at those climate resilience challenges. And finally, the final value of Industry 5.0, which is around resilience. So it's about how we increase the robustness of industrial production and production in general, you know, so it's better able to deal with any disruptions, right? And also it links with critical infrastructure in terms of crisis. And of course, this is the area that Mark has done some research in the past as well. So some of the opportunities across that resilience, I mean, there is, again, all the opportunities, or most of those opportunities, from my perspective, they link back to the issue of sustainability and climate change and adaptability, right? So there are calls looking at, for instance, smart and resilient infrastructure. So how do we ensure we have low carbon, energy efficient infrastructure design and production, right? There are calls around climate resilience and adaptation, so strategies for adapting with the influx of climate change, especially for more vulnerable regions and also ecosystems. And finally, there are a number of calls at the moment across UKRI, for instance, for collaborative research projects, right? So that enable us to work with international partners. So there are, for instance, at the moment, there are calls to work with colleagues in Luxembourg, in Norway, in Brazil, in Germany, and also with colleagues in the United States. So there are opportunities there. So of course, if you it's worthwhile. I just wanted to highlight that those are available as well. They're a bit more open, but of course, if they align to these global challenges we're all having to deal with at the moment, that would be better. So I think that was all I have to say. I mean, I have some more slides, but I'm going to skip through them. And I'll just say, basically, I'll leave you with a big thank you, and just to say that we are having together with the CIB World Congress now in May 2025, we also are hosting the 12th International Workshop of When Social Sciences Meets Lean and Digital Technologies. So if anyone is interested and would like to join us for the workshop, of course, you're more than welcome, and please just contact me and I can provide you some more information. So thank you very much, and I'll pass the word now on to Billy. I don't know if anyone wants to ask any questions before you proceed.
Let's hold the questions till the end, if you don't mind.
We'll hold it to the end. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia. I will start to share my screen. And whilst I'm doing that,
while Professor Hare is doing that, notice the 17 SDGs in his backdrop there.
Yes. Okay. Can you see a blue slide?
Yes, we see it, Billy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So those of you who know me, and you heard from the bio that my research area is almost exclusively construction, safety, health and well-being. And I've delivered a number of presentations for CIB over the last few years on that subject area. So you're probably sick of me talking about that particular subject. And I wanted to maybe speak for a shorter duration to just supplement Patricia's presentation on 5.0 with something that I thought could maybe complement that I'm involved in myself. And in so doing, I decided I would like to talk to you around digital transformation within UK small to medium enterprises, which is a piece of research that I'm undertaking with a PhD student, Gail McEwen. And Gail is, as well as a PhD student, she is a construction digital trainer, and she travels all over the UK delivering training on digital technologies for construction companies. So it puts her in a very good position to undertake a PhD of this nature. Having said that, I don't have any outcomes from the PhD yet, but I thought it would be nice, as I said, just to supplement Patricia's excellent presentation with some words of my own around that whole area of digital transformation, which I thought would be complementary to the first presentation. I have the obligatory slide saying how wonderful I am and what I've done over the last 20 odd years in academia. I've been the photo on the far left is quite a young version of me from one of my very first CIB conferences. I think that one was in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. I'm, as already mentioned in the bio, joint coordinator of W99, Construction Safety, Health, Wellbeing, and the BEAM Research Centre, where I'm one of the two directors of the research centre, which has allowed me in recent years to expand beyond my usual specialism that the typical definition of an expert who knows more and more about less and less. I've allowed me to expand some of my knowledge in management of other projects beyond construction, health and safety. And at the far right is an unflattering photo of me on the BBC News that went worldwide when I was asked to comment on the Rennie Mackintosh fire in Glasgow back in 2017, I think it was. So that I like to always show that. It shows my international credentials, Mark. And just like Patricia, just want to say a little bit. I've just got one slide on some of the work that I've done over the years that's resulted in something tangible that's impacted on industry. The top right was a digital tool flowing from research to educate designers on identifying construction hazards within their designs, and demonstrated how a pictorial visual aid for designers is a bit better than checklists and spreadsheets to try and trigger them to think about the hazards in their designs. The bottom right, again, was a digital tool that came out of a number of years of research for the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive in the UK, which is the UK equivalent of OSHA, where undertook a number of research projects around worker engagement, to engage workers on construction, health and safety, to, as one of the statements Patricia mentioned, looking at the workers as assets rather than overheads. Well, worker engagement is very much that approach, that you invest all this time, money and training in your workforce. Surely you can make use of that expertise when you're managing health and safety, and hold them up to yourself like a mirror to the business, to the organisation, to identify your weaknesses and recommend improvements to manage health and safety. The top left is is something in the UK that's well known, the CITB, the Construction Industry Training Board, which produces the standard, when I say standard, the standard that everyone usually follows for construction training and construction skills, and their well-known publication on construction health and safety. I think I must be the only academic that has written a chapter for it. It's usually reserved to hard-nosed industry experts who know practical stuff. So I like to think I'm somewhat of a practical academic. And bottom left is the one, probably one area outside of health, safety and environment, construction waste. And again, everything has a digital element to it these days. If you're doing research and you don't have a digital element, then it's not worth doing, it seems. And that was a digital tool to identify the source and the cost of materials waste going into a construction skip. And that was for Zero Waste Scotland, a Scottish government department. So that's some of my highlights and the work that I've done. But I'm going to move away from that and talk about digital transformation and the work that I'm doing with my PhD student. The term itself can be somewhat emotive. What does it mean, digital transformation? And I quite like this very basic definition, which, you know, it's always good to have a basic definition that you can build upon. Making anything manual, processes digital sounds like a very simplistic and easy to understand concept. In terms of examples of the digital transformation, we've got to remember that there's a spectrum or a continuum of approaches and technologies. So, for example, at one end there I have Microsoft Excel, which when I was a student, that was the extent of digital education that I had, and at the time that was magnificent. Solved a lot of manual problems at the time. But even a smartphone, cloud technology, smart sensors, and also analyzing big data are all within the examples of that definition of using digital technology and digital processes to improve how we do our construction work. There are, of course, the buzzwords which I have on the slide: BIM, Building Information Modeling, CDE, Common Data Environments, Digital Twins, and these are the sexy terms which get a lot of attention within the construction industry, particularly attracting research funding as well. But specific digital technologies within UK construction that my PhD student will be focusing on is, of course, you can't get away from BIM, Building Information Modeling, 3D printing, which is becoming more prevalent on larger construction sites, where versions of cementitious materials, for example, can lend themselves to 3D printing of entire structures. Drones are usually cited in terms of my area, safety and hazards, but the reality is drones are being used for far more mundane activities such as surveys, monitoring progress, and identifying defects and maintenance. That's probably where they're used mostly. Safety hazards being a nice extra option that they can be used for, if I'm being honest. And Patricia already spoke about Internet of Things and how sensors are being used, again, on construction plant and equipment. And again, that's not the future. That's happening on many projects as we speak. Cloud platforms and data software, of course, there's many which I won't go into this today, but these are also various technical and digital technologies which are being offered by industry in the UK. The key driver, I think, is productivity. The graph that I've chosen to show you here is a UK construction productivity graph, which shows the blue line at the top, the whole economy, and these other multicolored lines which are showing the trend analysis is the various elements of construction output and construction productivity, which can show that it's far lagging behind, which should probably not be a surprise. Within the UK, this is well-known phenomenon that construction productivity is lower than other industry sectors and seems to have a real problem. Of course, productivity is not the only driver for digital transformation. We also have to consider the added value that it can provide and the social input to society in general. The claimed benefits, which I'll just touch on, but won't go into in too much detail. First and foremost, it's always the first one on the list, improved productivity, but also increased safety through the digital technology, which can plan, identify hazards in advance, but also now monitor on site as well. Better build quality through BIM technology, which lends itself to prefabrication and off-site manufacture, but also I'm seeing on projects when I'm on construction sites as an academic these days, it's quite common practice to have digital technology photographing and monitoring and scanning the construction site and the structure that's being built before things are covered up to show as evidence that it has been built properly and to the correct specification, and that's becoming more of a valued element and benefit of the technology in the face of the requirements that we now have in the UK as a result of the Grenfell fire and the building safety regulator requirements, which is predominantly around fire and structural quality assurance. Improved sustainability, which I've touched on with my own work, the reduction of waste, but digital technology to count carbon and areas like that is also on the rise. Improved collaboration is another aspect of BIM technology, of course, but that's always been there since even when I worked on construction sites, the larger sites I worked on, there was a rudimentary receptacle for PDF and digital technology, and that's what's really improved in recent years in terms of a common data environment. And lastly, there, my part of my screen's just hiding the last one, so I'll leave it and move on. This is a well-known graph, which I thought Patricia might have had, which I thought I might duplicate if I have it, but thankfully she didn't have it in her slides. And it's the McKinsey Global Institute Digitization Index, which lays out bare just, I know it's a few years old now, it's nearly 10 years old, and there's not an updated version that I'm aware of, but Patricia might prove me wrong. The construction industry, you can see on this graph, is second from the bottom, only beaten by agriculture and hunting in terms of digital adoption and readiness. And there's lots been written since 2015 on that. Some of the problems that I've touched on in previous slides there. But the poor productivity, poor efficiency means poor profits and profitability. Therefore, no funding for research and development, no ability to incorporate into live projects any new technology for fear that it might delay the program. These kind of issues are still prevalent even today, 10 years on, within the construction industry. And globally, according to my PhD's literature review, productivity on a global level is still very slow. ONS, which is in the UK, the Office of National Statistics, our government agency that covers all our statistics, including the construction industry, shows that very little change in the last 50 years since post-war era. That's a bit harsh, I suppose, but it does reflect how slowly construction moves in terms of innovation and new changes. Where we have seen improvements, it has been with what we call tier one contractors, the main contractors or principal contractors, as they might be called in the UK. They're doing well, but the majority of our workforce and our employers are our SMEs, our small and medium enterprises, and indeed micro organisations of single-figure workers, and they are not adopting as quickly as our tier one contractors. I just wanted to drop this in because it's a GCU publication from Michael Tong and Kenneth Lawani, some of my colleagues, who have done some research for Scottish Government and this approach to effective digital transformation. And they came up with this 4-stage process, which is not too unlike other 4-stage processes that you can find in the literature, but with a slightly different perspective, looking at it from the SME perspective, which, step 1, reflect on the future of work, not what we're doing now, but what will the future look like, because that might end up putting our business out of business. The need for reimagining the construction process and how the smaller organisation works and their procedures and processes, before then thinking about managing the innovation. And that's not just about the financial management, the training and education and supporting resources, before moving to step 4, the actual implementation. This is moving on to the actual research that my PhD student Gail plans to undertake over the next 12 months through. She's now in the data collection stage, ready to embark on that. And the objectives there, I think, will really be useful for adding to our knowledge and understanding in this area. To explore the lived experiences, look at the interaction between social technical elements, investigate the perceptions of what the benefits are from the SME's perspective, as well as their views on how effective the digital transformation strategy has been, and finally the analysis of the external drivers as well. I thought I would show you some of the questions that my student has been coming up with, because from a qualitative perspective, it's quite interesting. It's looking at it possibly from a more phenomenological approach in research terms. What does digital transformation mean to you as an SME owner, and the specific experiences you've had of digital technology and the overall experience. In terms of the next objective, how collaboration has affected that, either hindered or aided the technology integration, and how's the feedback been communicated and actioned. When it comes to the benefits, what does that mean? Have the SMEs actually seen any benefit from the digital technology, or has it been a case of just having to adopt it to suit the needs of those above you in the supply chain, for example? And then the 5th objective, how well digitization has been for the company overall, and has the user experience been considered? So USB been a factor of that as well. And then external factors, how difficult has it been to access funding? Has that helped? Has it made any difference in other market dynamics? So I think these are unanswered questions, I think, that particularly for SMEs, that the work will explore. In terms of just a little bit of discussion, then the barriers are not just financial. As I said, the barriers might include also what training needs are there, and what other support there might be. In terms of pitfalls, I think it's a real worry that as an SME, trying to even implement a new technology can indeed result in you going bust, delaying projects, projects overrunning. So these are very real felt pitfalls amongst SMEs. And in terms of what is the best way forward, who can help, who can provide financial assistance, but also support as well. And in thinking about that, I've just thought from a industry perspective, Patricia did a good job of showing the research academic perspective. I just wanted to touch on the what's available, not only in terms of research, but industry organisations as well. So in the UK, we have Innovate UK, who can provide funding and support. So can the BEIS, the Industry Government Department, which is there to help, supposedly to help our industry improve. And they can provide financial help and support as well. But don't forget the Construction Innovation Hub, which supports in terms of resources. In terms of industry organisations, the CIB have produced a lot of helpful guidance, which you can access for free, even if you're not a CIB member. And the Construction Industry Council likewise has been doing the same, at a slightly higher level as well. And then there's the building information modeling task group, who again have got lots and lots of on their website, lots of good, useful guidance and support material, particularly for SMEs as well. So thank you for that. Hopefully that's been a nice supplement to Patricia's presentation and maybe gives us a platform for maybe some further discussion.
Great. Thank you both very much. What a good way to close the semester with presentation from two distinguished professors from the built environment. So thank you both of you for sharing your thoughts on 4.0, 5.0 digitalization, and particularly as it relates to the SMEs. I think this was really eye-opening, and you covered such a lot of ground and opportunities for further research, as well as funding opportunities that one could be looking at in UK and the global perspective. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions coming up. So let me go to our audience and see if anybody wants to go first. I, of course, have a number of questions, but if somebody can beat me to that, can raise their hand and ask the question. Anybody? All right, so as they're thinking, let me throw my question in first. And when we talk about Industry 4.0 and 5.0, and both of you touched upon that there's such a discrepancy in how it is used within the construction industry, particularly if you look at big, large firms versus SMEs or mom and pop shows. There's a lot of discrepancy in how it gets used. So when we talk about Industry 4.0, of course, there's a lot of benefits that could be derived in terms of productivity, in terms of quality, and so on. But Industry 5.0 touches upon totally different aspect of industry and workers, resilience, sustainability, human-centric behaviors. Given that we are already far behind in 4.0, I see that as, in terms of Maslow's hierarchy, we are at the lowest rung in 4.0, and yet we are talking about 5.0, which is perhaps higher in the Maslow's hierarchy in that sense. So what are your thoughts, both of you?
Right, very good point, Mark. And I think we should really look at that as an opportunity, isn't it? So whatever changes we do implement in terms of processes and the use of digital technologies in construction, which of course are far behind other industries, right? I think there's an opportunity that we do that, not only looking at the use of technology to improve profit in a way, but also we do that in a more sustainable way, So I think really we should skip altogether Industry 4.0 in construction if we could, and move straight onto the concepts of 5.0. So bring in more research and innovation, and that is going to be a very difficult thing to do, because we all know that the construction industry in general is not very keen to investing in research and innovation. Well, they do invest in innovation, not so much in research, I would say. But I think it's basically an opportunity, for us to jump straight onto the point, the 5.0 bandwagon. And of course, I think we can see more and more, especially I think here in the UK, more and more companies are trying to improve the ways in which they operate, to reduce the company's carbon footprints and to reduce footprints of their products as well. So I think we are moving in that direction slowly, but of course there's plenty of good opportunities there.
Thank you, Patricia. Billy, any comments?
Yeah, I think you used a good analogy as first rung on the ladder. I use the term continuum, and I think the continuum is stretching wider and wider. And what I mean by that is there are some companies, some organizations who are ready to move into 5.0. But at the other end, there's organizations who maybe not even on the first rung of 4.0. And I think that disparity is being stretched further and further with the passage of time. So, you know, what's the answer to that? I've touched on what some government departments can do and government funding, but I think the larger organizations that have the resources and have the scale and critical mass really need to think about their supply chain and how they can help them and support them, or that disparity expanding continuum of those at the very cutting edge, moving quite far away from those at the bottom. But just one final point, I think the good sign is the new generation of graduates coming through. The impact on society and, you know, the environment and the globe as a system is felt by the new generation of our graduates more than ever than any other generations, including my own. So that's possibly the key as they come through the promotion into senior positions. I'm hoping that they see that and act upon it, and I think that's where the 5.0 is looking to that generation as they mature. Yeah.
Can I
Thank
add
you.
to that? Yeah, can I
Yeah,
add to that?
please.
I think I think it's an excellent point. I fully agree with you, Billy. And there's also, I think that we also need to have a consideration that some companies, I feel here in the UK, a lot of the companies are actually pushing more towards the net zero agenda as a means to enable them some competitive advantage, right? So especially some SMEs are doing that to gather competitive advantage, which is positive, but at some point that's going to stop. So we need to have other kinds of incentives as well. So
yeah. And if they're not, if these companies are not just that, they're finding that they can't recruit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Dave, do you have a question? I see your mic was on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious, you're presenting and talking about the UK here. Do you have a perspective of anything different happening in Scotland or England or Wales? And then might you extend that to other parts of Europe as to how this has played out or may play out into the future between the different parts of the UK and then different countries in the EU?
I would say in a UK context, Dave, that things do emanate from London and the southeast of England. That's where the innovation usually takes place. But in the other devolved nations, we see pockets of good practice. And I'm going to be biased now as a Scottish person and say that we do have a very strong social ethos, and in Scotland we do think, I feel like we do think more about the impact on society and taking everyone with us. So we tend to focus on our work in that way. That, I don't know, I can't say, believe it or not, Dave, I have never in my life been to Wales, so I cannot speak for the Welsh in this respect, but maybe Patricia has.
I have been to Wales, but I don't think I'm the best person to talk about different local, regional differences. I've been living in England for 20 odd years now, but I'm of course not British. So anyway, but what I was going to say is that I think there are innovations, there are pockets of innovations all around, and I was going to use an example of a project that I found extremely interesting, which is a bit of a demonstrator project that's happening in Scotland, right, in which they're looking at ways through which we can use green areas to help improve people's health. And they're doing it in very practical ways. It's about helping, not only talking to the population and improving the green areas in its own right, so they're more usable for people, which is what we would, me as an architect, this would be the first thing that would come in my mind. But it's also about actually engaging with doctors and helping doctors prescribe people to actually go and use those green areas and spend more time outside. And the measurements are being done in terms of improvements to the to the green areas in their own right, improvements in terms of how is it more biodiversity coming into those green areas. Are doctors actually doing more prescriptions to help people, use those green areas more? Are there cultural activities happening on these green areas to actually help bring more people around? So it's very multidisciplinary in nature, really. I find it truly inspiring, because you pick up one issue that could help in different ways, and you bring different people together to try to try and help that issue, and hopefully provide some benefit to the environment and to us as humans as well, so it's just an example. Yeah.
Patricia, you triggered something in my mind which is a truism, and that is, like, Scotland being a smaller nation is an excellent representation of the rest of the UK. So it lends itself to experimenting and doing the pilot exercise. If it works in Scotland, usually that means it can then be expanded. So I think that's where we get those small pockets where we get the opportunity to do the pilot and the experimenting. We didn't say anything about the European context, but I think as academics, we see that benefit, but we're continuously fighting against our government to try and realise those benefits of working with our European partners.
Yeah, of course. And there are certain areas of research that we know for a fact that they are of interest to the European countries as well. So issues I was talking about, circularity, for instance. There have been calls for bids in circularity in the UK, and there's currently an open call for European funding as well. So those are very important issues, and I think there's a global push, for us to help collectively try and resolve those issues. So
you're both touching upon some of the key points that I had questions on. So let me carry that thread forward. But thank you, Dave, for that question. But let me reach out to our audience again one more time. Not that I don't give them a chance to ask a question. Well, so while you're all thinking, let me continue that conversation further. When we talk about construction 4.0 again, and in the context of 5.0, presently, the CIB focuses on the SDGs. And Billy, I was pointing out to your backdrop there where you have the 17 SDGs laid out. But my question is that, if we adopt construction 4.0, that is more technology-based, what is the likely burden that it is going to cause on achieving the SDG goals or the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly when, again, I'm reflecting now to one of the McKinsey reports where they pointed out that, decarbonizing the construction industry, where much of the influence was because of the fuel consumption in the industry. And I'm trying to put those two pieces together, that on one hand, we are trying to get more into construction 4.0. That'll be more use of technology and perhaps more fuel consumption, energy consumption. How do we balance the two things together?
Do you want me to go first, Patricia?
Please, because I'm puzzled. I don't know how to answer. It's good if you manage to find that answer.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, the reason I have the SDGs behind me is they are central to everything our university does, and has been the case since before they became popular with other places. It's quite common now to align, and even CIB now align. They want to demonstrate the alignment with our working groups with the SDGs. But to take a leaf out of the GCU book, whenever I decide on a research bid or a new initiative, I must make, as part of my business case to the university, which SDGs they relate to and what's the likely impact for the SDGs that I do. And I'm proud of that, because that shows, that's how you show the commitment in real terms. And I'm afraid that I don't think that's the case universally. I think they're used as window dressing as part of your brand in some cases, and you need to take them more seriously. And I think you're absolutely correct, Mark, in that the increased use of digital technology, therefore the energy to crunch the numbers and to make the digital technology work is increasing, as Patricia showed in her. I need to learn that term. Is it a zegabyte or something? But that sounds like a lot of energy as well. So therefore, I think we've got to think in tandem about how that energy is produced that's going to deliver that technological change, which means more renewable energy, of course. So it's got to go hand in hand with your aspirations. And the phrase that I think you might be familiar with is a just transition, where you acknowledge that you can't just drop off a cliff edge, stop using fossil fuels, but you need to transition. And I think some governments are trying to live that and trying to live, what's the phrase I'm trying to use? Live or walk the talk and do what they need to do to make it happen. But I think that there's a lot of pressure from the business community, or I don't know who exactly, that thinks we're wasting our time and we should not bother with such efforts to reduce our impact on the environment through our actions. And that's worrying, because it's like business comes first seems to be creeping back into the mindset. So I think people above my ability need to address that.
I see that Professor Widener has a question. Go ahead, Ted.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I look back to my undergraduate career, where I was taught in architecture school about passive solar design. And in my research looking at facility operations, the bulk of the energy for a building occurs during its occupancy or use. And yet I don't see very many buildings still effectively using passive solar design. Are there any opportunities with AI to help architects and engineers design more effectively to reduce operating costs?
Sounds like an excellent question for Patricia.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure there are opportunities to use AI to help us, evaluate existing data. AI is really good for that, and actually make that data meaningful. So it's better, it's better. It enables better decision making in an easier form, right? So I'm pretty sure there are opportunities, and I think that's an excellent idea for a piece of research project. I was just thinking of that, because there are passive solar design, passive solar design kind of strategies that can be used. There are all sorts of different design strategies that can help the way in which we actually build this. There's a big need to actually look at design for assembly, disassembly as well, when you're talking about circularity approaches, for instance, and it was an area of research that happened maybe 20 years ago, maybe a bit less than that now, but it stopped. Nobody has looked into that. And now there's a massive need for it, so all those areas, I think, from a design perspective, we need to start looking at and hopefully, developing some new ideas on, and finding ways through which we can pass that information on to designers easily. It's the same. I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, I worked on evidence-based design. There's loads of evidence in terms of how the design impacts health outcomes in hospitals, for instance, right? But the difficulty is to bring that information together to help inform designers in an easy way. So AI now, I think, provides great opportunities for that.
Thank you.
Patricia, I would imagine that what I was going to say, I think, is similar to what you've just said there, is that the data probably already exists, that the AI machine that can use, maybe it's just a case of bringing them together. It's already there, and the AI technology will crunch the numbers and produce the design. What I'm not sure of is I keep hearing how the AI will eventually fall over if there's no new knowledge being fed into it. It will just be on a death loop of repetition.
It's all about producing the right information and then being able to use it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'll use social housing because I'm working in social housing at the moment, right? But social housing providers, they have loads of data about the state of their housings, but it's all spread across different databases. It's very difficult to actually use it in an appropriate form. And I think now with AI, there's great opportunities, you know, to analyze, evaluate the data, even softer data from, they collect data from tenants in terms of their satisfaction and so on. Again, AI can be used to actually help analyze that much more effectively and hopefully, you know, make all the data more useful than it is now, sitting.
To help the architects rather than replace them.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ted. Sanjay, I saw that you were opening your mic. Did you have a question to ask? All right. I think we lost Sanjay again. Any other questions from the audience? Well, let me go to my last question. I always get to ask the last question. And so, you know, you both of you touched upon a lot of interesting things, and I think this conversation can go on and on. But the interest of time, let me ask my one last question, which is that I think, Patricia, you touched upon, you just mentioned circular economy, and the thought that was coming to my mind was that, you know, in all of these contexts, there seems to be a break in the supply chain to achieve circular economy. As much as, you know, one party might want it, if there is no continuity in the supply chain, then that concept, in my opinion, fails. So I was going to ask both of you for what are your thoughts on, you know, in the context of 4.0, 5.0, SDGs and SMEs, how can we achieve that? How can we move that thought further, that circular economy might be beneficial under all of these contexts?
I think a collaboration, if these goals become common goals for everyone and everyone can see the benefit to both them as separate entities and collectively as part of the entity that they operate in. But then how do you facilitate that commonality and collaboration and coming together? That surely has to be a consequence of the culture that our governments and our governing bodies facilitate. So they need to show the leadership to make that happen. Implementing that's the difficult thing, of course.
Yeah, of course. I think that's one element. And I think what we need to find out is a way to ensure that all those circular economy strategies become economically viable as well, because we all know businesses are there for profit and they're always going to be moved for profit, isn't it? And so we need to find ways to make those strategies more profitable. So because then they are right, everybody agrees they are right, but if they help business as well, this is when you're going to be able to implement them, I think. I'm not sure how to do that. And this is, again, Mark, I think I fully agree with you. One of the biggest barriers for the circular economy to actually help in practice is that the supply chain is just not there. You know, we don't know how do you link the supply of reused materials with the demand. You know, it's very complicated. And again, AI might be able to help with that. So there is a need for better strategies to align the supply chain so that it becomes feasible, but also to ensure that it's, you know, there's an economic incentive in actually doing what's right for the environment as well. So.
Well, with that, let me see if that has raised any further questions among the audience. Last chance. Well, thank you both very much. That has been very interesting presentation as well as the follow-up discussion. I really appreciate both of you taking time at the busiest time of the semester to make this presentation. So indeed, thank you all very much. As you all know, this is the last seminar for the semester. And all of these seminars by all our distinguished colleagues and professors around the world are all available through the CIB YouTube channel. So if you missed any, want to go back and reflect on some of the discussions that we had, please approach the CIB YouTube channel to get access to them. So with that said, let's give both of them a big round of applause. You can open your mics now or just do a digital thank you, whichever way you prefer.
Well done, Gauss. Well done.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
So
very
we'll-
much, Mark, for the invitation, and it's been a pleasure to be here today with everyone, and thank you, Billy, as well.
Yeah, almost like we
Thank-
planned it together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.